Hi, I'm Godless Engineer, and you're watching Atheist Edge. We were talking about the UU MOU. It's basically a memorandum of understanding that, because my question is, they even mention, humanism.
Right.
As being a pathway to scouting.
If you do a little research on that, you'll find out that the UU church members pushed to get more clarification on that statement, and the statement that came out after that said that the Boy Scouts have not changed their stance,
right? And
you can be a member of a UU troop as long as you believe in God. So you got to meet the organization standards and the national BSA standards in order to be a scout.
Do you think that it's based on troop politics, whether or not those things are adhered to rigidly or less strictly?
It's all based on money. Everything is about what keeps the donors giving the dollars to keep paying the bills. And I, very cynically say they'll change anything if it means the dollars go up.
Yeah. Which, I can understand that. A lot of people, I think, try to vilify capitalist goals in that respect. But, if your goal is to is for the continuity of the institution, you should have some pragmatic viewpoints on how to actually continue it.
Well, as the executive director of a council myself, my only goal was make payroll every other Friday.
Yeah, right. You have people professionally in your employ.
That's right.
That depend on their job to provide for their families.
And sometimes those very people adhered to these values that kept me from easily raising the money to pay them.
Yeah. And
as much as they wanted to hold to those values, they wanted to get paid more.
Yeah, which is it seems like a little bit contradictory in my opinion, but yeah.
Everybody's got to pay the rent, and
everybody does have to pay the rent.
Yeah.
Seems the best way to me, though, to do that is to allow for freedom of association, allow for private ownership, allow for property rights, allow for you to include or exclude whoever you would like to from your specific circle. Those are just kind of my opinions.
Some days the Boy Scouts will some days the atheist movement will garner the strength to have the voice that our homosexual brothers and sisters managed to get, and our trans brothers and sisters managed to get. We don't have that voice. We've not been strong enough. We're getting better all the time, but we will eventually get to the point where we put the pressure on them to make the change, but we're years away.
Well, my opinion on that is I kind of applaud the gay community because
absolutely
they took the culture of the time and they said they took it, they parsed things as they were, and they said, look, the way that we're going to get people to accept we are who we are and to not marginalize us is to A, make people understand that we're human beings just like they are.
Yes.
And B, we are their loved ones. We are their sons, daughters, neighbors, parishioners, teachers, students, faculty members. We are them. And we're beside them.
That's the message that atheism has not gotten out
there. Then that's
that's
what we have not done.
The least trusted group in America, surpassed only by Muslims, are atheists.
Well, actually,
we are not trusted.
It was Muslims, rapists, then atheists, actually.
We need to take a look at that.
Yeah. It was.
But it's crazy how
that's going to be right behind you, posted as you're saying that.
I hope I got that right then.
Actually, we're right above pedophiles. Everyone else is above us, and the question is.
Okay. Yeah.
We're above Muslims.
Equally qualified for the job. Would you vote for the X person for president. That's
Oh, okay.
Is that the okay?
It's a Pew 2013.
Yeah,
because we have an appeal.
There's
Yeah,
more recent ones that have come out.
Okay.
And but it's very sad that's how we are perceived. But when you think that every church enforces that every Sunday morning, and we don't have places that we can get our voice heard, but we have good examples in front of us, and what the gay community has been able to do.
what they've been able to do is great. Yeah,
Yeah, I think we won legal victories before they did, but we haven't won over
the cultural victories
cultural
that they
victories
have
that they
have
have.
far exceeded our own.
Yes.
I mean,
It's still illegal to hold a public office in the state of Texas
as an
atheist.
as a professed atheist. Yeah.
Now, in the end of the day, if one won an election, I don't think that would be nullified. But
No,
it's just sad that law is still in the books.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, that's where I was really going with that line, was that we haven't capitalized on those avenues of mainstreaming non-belief.
Right.
We haven't gone to lengths to show people that, look, I'm a non-believer, but I'm your brother, I'm your
Yes.
dad, I'm your son, I'm your sister, I'm your mother, I'm your checker at the grocery store, I'm your person who is in contact with you on a daily basis, but yet you don't recognize me.
Well, we still have people out there that are being ostracized by their families for non-belief,
Yeah.
and those people doing the ostracizing are reinforced every Sunday morning at church
Yeah.
for doing that. Look, what a great Christian you are, because you cut off your son
Yeah.
for taking all those dollars away from you
Right.
and getting an education.
And this is what they think passes for family values.
Yes. Tough love.
If you don't believe as I do, there is this very large chasm that is going to form between you and I as family members, because you do not accept what I accept.
And I personally wasn't strong enough to do that myself. My mother died just a year ago thinking I was the perfect Catholic boy, and that's exactly what I wanted her thinking. That was a battle I wasn't willing to fight, and I don't know if I would ever be willing to fight it. Now she's quite elderly and that kind of thing, but my heart goes out to these college-age kids that are coming to non-belief and having to deal with families. And this ties back into Boy Scouts. In Boy Scouts, we got kids learning about astronomy and geology and all these hard sciences, and they do a great job of teaching these things.
Right.
And then they're shocked that leads them to non-belief and says, oh, you can't be a member anymore because you don't believe in the fairy tale right after we taught you all the hard sciences.
Yeah. It's just, it's weird, because I think, thinking about, like, Tracy Harris, I saw a talk that she gave at a college one time, where she was talking about it, like, in terms, like, in real world terms, where she was saying something like, imagine you were part of a family, you were a boy and you had a sister, and you were active in extracurricular activities, let's say like basketball, right? And the parents supported your participation in the basketball programs, all these sorts of things. But your sister said, hey, I'm not into basketball, so I'm not gonna go to these basketball games that my brother is playing in, and it's not that I don't love my brother, it's not that I'm unsupportive of him being a part of the basketball program. It's just I'm not interested in it, right? In a normal situation like that, most reasonable parents say, okay, you don't want to go to your brother's basketball games, right? That's okay. We support your decision to not want to participate in that particular activity, and that's all right. We're okay with that. But when it comes to religion, if you're the child who says, you know what, I don't necessarily I'm not necessarily interested in this and I don't want to participate in it, you're immediately shunned, ostracized, vilified, demonized even, for even wanting to consider that you wouldn't want to be a part of this activity. Like, you know, and it's worse because you have, like, basketball is a real thing. People play it. It's a sport, you know? But this, like myth or this, like, thing that's presented without evidence, if you choose to ignore, to not want to be, you know, if you're not interested in it or you choose not to partake in it, you're totally cut off from any kind of family, any kind of friends, any kind of social involvement, and it's tragic.
You know, it comes down to the dividing line of what's a choice and what's not a choice. You mentioned the sports example, but in my family, I was expected to play football. All my brothers played football. Yeah. I rode the bench on so many teams because I wasn't any good. But we were expected to be athletes.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't one. And but I had to be on the team. My dad was the coach. So in my family, that wasn't a choice.
Yeah.
And, you know, and we are now finally coming to a healthier understanding of what choice means in the homosexual world. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that the majority of people thought being homosexual or not was a choice.
I couldn't choose to be homosexual.
Yeah.
I'm a heterosexual male, and
we're getting that, even though
I don't think I could
there's a
choose
huge portion of the
that.
Christian world that still won't accept it. Most people do. Well, I don't have any choice but to be an atheist. It is not something I can decide tomorrow that I'm going to believe. I can't believe in God without proper evidence any more than I can choose to not believe in gravity.
I agree with that, but I agree that you can't choose what you believe, right? Mm-hmm. Because belief is a binary proposition.
Right.
You either are convinced of a thing or you are not.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It's the state of being convinced of a proposition. Belief.
Right.
You either believe it or you don't, right? You're like, oh, I don't believe that, or yes, I do. It's not like you choose to believe a thing. But, however, you can, I think, you have choice on what you consider criteria for belief.
That's fair.
You know what I'm saying?
That's fair. And I also have to come to grips with what was I when I really didn't believe anymore, but I was saying prayers in front of people.
Right.
If you asked me if I was a Christian then, I would have said yes. So there's a pragmatic element to this as well.
Right. Like
I
what
believe
makes
what I
sense.
need to believe
Yeah.
to survive.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the survival thing kicks in, and it's only been since I don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
But boy, I would love to go back in time and have accepted atheism earlier. So it was a belief that I had to come to grips with. So I think there's some truth to what you're saying, that we can't. It's not just boom, the truth hits me and that's what it is.
No,
from
yeah,
now
you
on.
don't. Yeah, you either
that's
are
fair.
convinced or you aren't. But you can also, at a point, you can say, well, I could amend or modify what I use as criteria to accept or not accept.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I could
Right.
say, well, to me, this form of evidence is no longer is credible to me. Like, you know, saying something like, I'm not going to utterly and wholeheartedly rely on anecdote anymore
Yeah.
to be persuaded to believe a thing.
Sure.
That's a choice you have.
Well, you're wearing a Dallas Cowboys hat. A rationale I have used for years that the Dallas Cowboys are the best football team is because they have the biggest fan base.
Yeah.
How can they not be the best team without the biggest fan base? Well, 30-something years without a Super Bowl pretty much solidifies they're not the best team
I
in
have
football.
to admit, though, that, you know, a little bit of faith goes into the reasoning, man. I mean, I'm not a man of faith, but, man, they're my team. And
Dak we
you know what I'm
trust.
saying? Dak we trust. You know what I'm saying? We're actually discussing off camera a little bit ago about some of the circumstances or requirements for excommunication involving the Catholic Church. You're an ex-Catholic.
Mm-hmm. Technically, I'm still a Catholic.
Technically, you're still a Catholic.
They
if
won't
you've
let
never,
me be an ex-Catholic.
Right. Okay. So if you've never actually been like excised from the religion, then they would
Right.
they would consider you a
I'm
part of the
still on the
religion.
rolls. I'm
That'd be
still
just
on the
like a
rolls.
Mormon that posthumously baptizes people or something like that.
You can be a Catholic and still go to hell, so they're cool with that.
Yeah, right. They're like, okay, yeah, you'll still burn or whatever.
Didn't
if you
earn my
don't,
way
yeah.
into heaven.
Yeah, you didn't get there,
Yeah.
so to speak. So the story that I related is that my grandmother, before I was ever even born, was a practicing Catholic. Confessed and took communion and did the catechism and all that stuff. So, and when she divorced her first husband, she told me that because she divorced her first husband, she was excommunicated from the Catholic Church. Now you've told me that may not actually be completely accurate. So would you explain that to me?
Well, excommunication is a very specific thing, and it comes from the Pope.
So it has to be something official.
Yes, and you think about it, Hitler was never excommunicated. Stalin was never excommunicated. Hitler was a Catholic to the day he died. I guess Stalin wasn't. Stalin became an atheist. But there's lots of there are people who have been excommunicated, and usually that is something that's reserved for people who still believe, but they just don't believe the Catholic way, and refuse to acknowledge that they are, that they have made the change, or so. That's where excommunication tends to come in, not for people who do horrible things where you think it would be. And when in the case of divorce,
was that an excommunicable?
No,
offense?
they never excommunicated over that. That was just you were out of communion with the church.
So you're saying that you couldn't take communion anymore if you were
couldn't take
divorced.
communion anymore, and actually it wasn't even divorce. It was if you got remarried.
Oh,
The Bible doesn't really mention divorce. It mentions remarrying.
Okay.
So, and there are Catholic divorce ministries out there. And I know plenty of people within the Catholic Church who just kind of ignore it. They got divorced, they got remarried, and they just continue. They go receive communion, and as long as their checks that go on the collection plate don't bounce, the church doesn't say a thing about it.
Have you seen this like touchpad communion plate or a donation plate that they have now in the churches?
I have not.
Yeah, it's a thing where it's a chip reader, and you just you touch your card to the plate, a little reader on the plate, and you type in whatever you want to donate, and it's
Well, and they've always, it's funny how they are so far behind the times and everything else, but when it comes to collecting money, they're right up there.
they're right on the cutting edge.
With
Yeah,
everybody else.
like have you seen this? Like,
Oh my God.
yeah,
Before we get too far off the topic of divorce, though, something else that's fascinating in the Catholic Church is, they offer an annulment, which is basically to say that there was a mistake made, that you were married, but you
should have never been married. Yeah.
God didn't recognize, which very much described my first marriage that lasted 25 years. Damn. But here's what's fascinating is for an annulment to happen, both parties have to agree. So, and this happened in the case of a sibling of mine, where his wife wanted a divorce. He didn't. He wanted to stay married. They had kids. She divorced him. She left him. They had to do a whole horrible custody thing. And then when he wanted to get remarried, he sought an annulment, and she said no. So
that seems a little punitive to me.
He left the church and never came back, not due to a choice of his own. He wanted to stay in the church. But because he married this witch who absolutely would not follow a church rule she didn't believe in. She became Catholic for him to get married when they first got married. When she got divorced, of course, she left the church and didn't want anything to do with it, and stuck him with that situation. And
women being vindictive? Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
So that wasn't wholly accurate what she told me, that like unless she somehow got the Pope to recognize her one marriage, right? Like,
I'll take a stab in the dark
that she didn't. Yeah.
Excommunication is this great definitive term that explains why she wasn't going to church anymore. Maybe that's why she used that term.
Is this
But she never got a document or a decree.
No.
The odds are no one at her church ever even found out that she got a divorce.
Her priest did, because when she sought counseling, well, the counseling was she was married to a paranoid schizophrenic, right?
Right.
So he beat her incessantly. This guy was something else. He would sit her in a chair in their home and talk to his dead mother while he berated her in the chair, telling his dead mother, "Look, see what I got to put up with, Mom, from this one."
Wow.
And would beat shit out of her, to the point where she was so scared that she slept with a butcher knife under her pillow. This was what, just to give you an idea what this man was like, right? So abusive, mentally ill, the whole 9 yards. And her priest's answer during this counseling that she received was, you stay married to that man no matter what you want, because you're a child of God and you're supposed to stay married to the person that you marry.
And the Catholic Church had to come to some realizations too. Annulments are given away like communion wafers now. This is not a hard thing to do, because they realized, the church did, these situations were happening, and people like your grandmother were leaving the church, and so were their donations.
In droves, yeah.
Yeah, so the Catholic Church suffered, and so suddenly...
They had to let up.
Yeah. It became very easy. I was married for 25 years to a decent human being. Neither of us ever cheated on each other. We just grew apart, and we weren't... we're still friends to this day. There's no reason in the world 50 years ago the Catholic Church would give us an annulment, but they'll give us one now.
Right, yeah, because
they want
if there weren't any extenuating circumstances before, like, you would have had to go through this whole rigmarole to show that there was.
And even your grandmother had these circumstances, and they still didn't want to.
And they still didn't want to let her go.
I had nothing like that. But to get me to come back to the church, they'd give me an annulment in a second.
Yeah.
And that's the circumstances, and that's. Christianity always catches up.
Yeah.
It just takes a long time. It took them 500 years to apologize to Galileo for saying that the earth revolved around the sun. But they got there. Yeah. They will eventually catch up on homosexuality. I don't know if they'll ever catch up on atheism, but that's
like
hard.
The one unforgivable. Yeah.
Right, but they'll always catch up. I did some research a while back on interracial marriage. And in the 1950s, 4% of America supported racial marriage, and now almost everybody does, and almost every church acknowledges it. It's very hard to find a church now that would ban interracial marriages, though I think there still are a few in places like Georgia and things like that. Yeah. But that was a very common thing, it's something that it took a Supreme Court decision to change in the 1960s.
Yeah.
That's how ingrained it was, and in that little amount of time, we've gotten rid of this horrible mentality.
Yeah, we've definitely dragged, at least
Christianity.
We've at least Christianity kicking and screaming into modernity. So
and then they act like it was their idea all along.
Yeah, and they act like, of course we wanted to be progressive in our thinking, of course, but with that being said, that was kind of the one thing that I personally wanted to touch on as far as a story for myself. But sure. I thank you, Randall, for. Oh yes. Before I forget, is there anything that you would like the viewers out there to know that you've got coming up?
Yes.
How to contact you, how to get in touch with you, or how to support anything that you've got going on right now?
You can contact me at thesecularscouter at gmail.com as my email address. I'll have a website up soon, but I'm still kind of working that out. Also, I'm on the board of directors for the Freedom from Religion Foundation Dallas chapter.
Awesome.
And we are going to be having an event with Dan Barker on October 16th at the Door in downtown Dallas. So please come out for that. You can find that on the Facebook page for the Freedom from Religion Foundation DFW chapter.
With that said, we'd like to thank you guys for sitting with us and listening to the discussion today. Thank you again to Randall for coming and being in studio with us. And with that being said, thank you. We are Atheist Edge. Good day.
Thank you.
Atheist Edge. Walking the edge of what some consider offensive. But your feelings don't matter here. only facts. Edgy commentary on the dangers of doctrine, the foibles of faith, the bullshit of belief, the stupidity of superstition, and the idiocy of indoctrination. With razor-sharp wit, curiosity, and critical thought, we take an unblinking look at today's religions. We are Atheist Edge.